Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. And today we are reviewing, or rather I should say re-reviewing, an absolute capo lavoro, una meraviglia of Rolex. We are talking, of course, about the Yacht-Master reference 126622. Now, before I get into this, a couple of things. First of all, I've got to thank Derek at Moyer Jewelers for sending this in, for so graciously entrusting me with this absolute beauty of a watch. As you guys know, Moyer are a highly reputable authorized dealer of many great brands. If you've been following the channel, you'll know that I buy and sell from them personally myself, so to have them lend in watches is an absolute honor and a pleasure. And the second thing is, well, as you guessed it, I've got to do a quick wristwatch check as we are talking about kind of nautical watches today. I'm wearing my Superman, and I've got it on the El Alamein strap that I designed for Wrist Candy Watch Club. In fact, I'm designing some straps for them next year, so I just think it's a really fantastic combination. So wristwatch check done. What else should I mention? Well, first of all, do like this video. It does really help with the channel. I don't ask for Patreon or any of that stuff. All I ask is a quick like if you'd like to see more of these kind of reviews. So I guess we should start, as always, with a little bit of history to contextualize this beautiful, stunning thing. The Yacht-Master is unlike any Rolex we have featured before, as it has the rarer distinction of being first introduced in the early 1990s. However, while this is nothing in terms of the long history of the brand, it is nonetheless an interesting watch because in many ways it is the culmination of all of the brand's history, innovations, and several iconic models. From the very onset, it was created as a true luxury watch with no tool watch pretensions. First introduced in 1992 with the model 16628 in entirely 18-karat yellow gold and at a contemporary 40mm size, with a smaller 29mm ladies version with the reference 69628 and a men's mid-size option that soon followed. In fact, the latter was the first time Rolex had ever made a mid-sized watch. That was at 35mm. This was the reference 68628, and that was in 1994. Yacht-Master perfectly encapsulates what this watch is all about and who it was intended for. More luxurious than a Submariner, but sportier than a Datejust, the Yacht-Master is the brand's nautical-inspired sports watch. It was clear from the late 1960s and the early 70s that the brand had graduated from utilitarian to upscale luxury. Rolex's first entirely all-gold diver made its debut in 1969 with the reference 1680, flaunting an all 18-karat yellow gold 40mm oyster case. Around this time, Rolex had already started experimenting with the Yacht-Master dial prototypes, but these advancements went into the Submariner decades later instead, and you can clearly see the Yacht-Master undeniably shares much of its looks and scale with the Submariner at first glance. Even though Rolex had already registered the name Yacht-Master with the intention of developing it into a new line, it wasn't until the 1990s that Rolex finally decided to create this new family of watches. Think of it as a counterweight to the Sea Dweller, which is the ultimate expression of an uber diving watch, with the Submariner in the middle as a more recreational diving watch. The Yacht-Master's water resistance never went higher than 100 meters, more like a Datejust. And just like a Datejust, the date with the Cyclops was always present at the 3 o'clock. To differentiate it from the Subs, the bezel was engraved. It was sculpted instead of having that flat insert. Because it was not intended as a professional diver, it was also always bidirectional too, making it far more useful for yacht racing than dive timing. Despite its relatively short existence, the Yacht-Master has evolved quite rapidly over the last few decades and prides itself on debuting an interesting array of combinations of materials. Aside from the different sizes, the next big change was in 1999, when Rolex introduced a brand new version of the Yacht-Master with the reference 16622. It had a new metal combination the brand calls Rolesium. Rolesium is the brand's name for using platinum and steel together in the watch. In 2005, a two-tone version was added to the line with the yellow Rolex Yacht-Master 16623. Rolex is Rolex's term for combining gold and steel in a watch. These hybridized metals were designed to have the luster of the precious metals involved, but boosted in strength by the steel. In 2012, Rolex replaced the Yacht-Master reference 16622 with the Yacht-Master 16622, which features an upgraded clasp with the EasyLink extension system and a blue chromalite lume instead of the older green lume. In 2015, Rolex then released the Yacht-Master 116655, which was the very first Yacht-Master crafted from ever rose gold, Rolex's patented rose gold alloy. It also was the very first Rolex fitted with the ultra-sporty Oysterflex rubber and metal bracelet hybrid, which matched perfectly the new black Cerachrome bezel insert, another proprietary alloy, but this time ceramic. Around the same time, Rolex consolidated the multiple smaller size options into another new size, a 37mm option that became available in 2016, along with the first ever two-tone with rose gold. That was the reference 116621. The final chapter, or more recent should I say, in case you are watching this way in the future, was the Yacht-Master going bigger in scale in 2019 with the 226659 at a whopping 42mm. Aside from the size increases, the Yacht-Master had always been based on the wonderful automatic 3135 and 3235 calibers. That was then replaced here for the first time with the 3255. And here we are. Now, first of all, I'll go over the materials. We have the Oyster steel case, which is 904L, which is, as you guys know, a little bit more corrosion resistant and has a very special luster all of its own, especially chosen by Rolex. We get sapphire glass and, of course, that rotatable 60-minute ratcheted or graduated platinum. This is 950 platinum, and it is, as you see, bi-directional. I've got to say the action to it is very similar to like a bezel of a GMT Pepsi. In fact, it feels pretty much exactly the same. But of course, we get this amazing sandblast contrast embossed bezel. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So in terms of dimensions, let's just go over it. The case is about just a smidgen under 40, but it actually juts out. If you see there, it's a slightly kettle shape, so it's even a smidgen wider, whereas if you see on the Submariner, it's just straight down. The height is 11.4, so really nice and slender. I love that slenderness. In fact, I have to say it's been incredibly comfortable. I remember that from the first time I reviewed it. Lug to lug is quite short indeed, at just a smidgen over 47mm. And then we have a 20mm lug width, which tapers nicely. Oh wow, actually 15.2. Okay, cool. I love it when bracelets taper like that. The weight, now bear in mind, I did take out some links. It's about 140, I would say probably 150, including full links. So it is quite a hefty watch considering its size. As is with all Yacht-Masters, it's 100 meters water resistant. Naturally, we have a trip-lock screw-down crown there. Same proportions as the Submariner, so really nice. We got the highly legible chromalite luminescence, which is long-lasting, wonderful orientation because, of course, we have that Submariner-style layout with the clearly distinguished triangles and circles and, of course, the rectangles to indicate orientation, which is just absolutely fantastic. In the clasp, we get that EasyLink extension, which just gives you an extra 5mm there, which is really great, especially in the summertime. I had this in a Datejust and it was extremely useful. Very easy, very solidly built. And then you've got the newer clasp with a fold over, and of course that kind of trigger system there, which is just, you see it there, really efficient. The Oyster bracelet is essentially the same as a brushed Oyster bracelet, but 3 links. However, we got polished for the center links and then brushed on the outer flanking links there, and that is echoed in the finishing of the clasp. So inside this handsome beast, we get the flagship caliber 3235, which of course is automatic, operates at 28,800 vibrations an hour, 31 joules, a very impressive 70 hours power reserve. That's thanks to a new mainspring barrel that they've added over its predecessor. Chronometer certified, of course, the plus or minus 2 seconds. We get that paramagnetic blue parachrome hairspring, high performance Paraflex shock absorbers, hacking, quickset, you name it, the works. And naturally, manual wind is also included. It's bidirectional self-winding via this perpetual rotor, and it has that lovely traversing bridge that gives it a lot of reinforcement against shock. It is the pinnacle of Rolex movements in terms of architecture and design. You got to remember that Rolex believes in evolution, not revolution. So their logic here was obviously, why change a winning concept? It's a newer generation of movement, entirely developed and manufactured by Rolex, of course. It's at the forefront of their watchmaking technology with 14 patents alone. And this new movement does offer fundamental gains in terms of precision, power reserve, resistance to shocks and magnetic fields over the previous calibers. Because of course it incorporates the new chronology escapement, which is one of these 14 patents. Because it's made out of a special nickel phosphorus, which is insensitive to magnetic interference, so it's just, very high energy efficient and offers great dependability. So in terms of style and design, well, let's start with the bracelet first of all. I'm getting really big Datejust vibes off this. I used to have this, I'm pretty sure it probably is even this same exact bracelet I owned on my reference 116200 Datejust, the modern Datejust. If I compare it to your standard brushed there with the high polish, it just adds a little bit more kind of, not bling, but a little bit more pizzazz, I guess. I do love how it tapers. It offers much more comfort. I can't stand it when watchmakers get lazy and they just do it the same way around, and you see that even in luxury watches. This actually wears far smaller than a 40mm watch. If we look at the lugs, for example, underneath, you see they're quite short there, and they have this little section. They're like claws. They really angle down and hug the wrist. Now this is my Tudor sub, but essentially this case is the same as a Rolex 1680. So you see how it's just flat. See how that's much substantially smaller? So it wears even smaller. So it's amazing how these little refinements to the case shape change the whole wearability of this piece. So in terms of the dial, we have that playful candy red lollipop hand, which matches the Yacht-Master script there. Then we have the Rehort, of course, because this is a contemporary Rolex. But it goes without saying, the main attraction is that absolutely ravishing, majestic, I mean, there's not enough words to describe this blue. It is absolutely beguiling and mesmerizing. I love how Rolex does their blues. I've owned 3 Datejusts all in succession with their sunburst blue dials like this. They just get it absolutely spot on. There's something very classy about the way it changes from different light. I mean, this is a prime example. We've got this kind of denim navy, and then it becomes almost blackened blue to royal blue, and then even cobalt blue, very much evoking its the nautical theme and the ocean, obviously. I mean, it's very fitting. Now, the maxi dial style with the applied markers does give it more of a modern Submariner feel, which I've also owned, and we're going to come back to that in a little while. So you kind of get the best of the new Submariner without the heft, which is very compelling indeed, especially if you are more smaller wristed like me, or you just prefer more classic sizes. Now, the use of the 950 Platinum gives it, and I'm going to quote Rolex, they say it gives it a silvery whiteness with a vibrant luminosity for an unmistakable sense of luxury. Well, you know what? I concur. It does do precisely that. The raised lettering gives a little bit of a sparkle without being too, how do you say, gauche or, what's the word that I'm looking for? Not vulgar, without being too ostentatious, I guess. There we go. And I think the choice of having raised numerals to a high polish is really accentuated with that sandblast. I mean, it gives it a lovely kind of three-dimensional look. Immaculately done. I mean, everything on this watch is immaculately done. And I think the bezel is what gives this watch that kind of masculine look. Just compare it to the sub there. It's quite mighty. It took me a while to get used to this. Now, a very important point to note here about the bezel is its importance to the Yacht-Master's identity, because it's actually a reference to the date just. You see, the chronograph, the first reference 6202, actually was a precursor to all Rolex watches with bezels. In fact, it was the first Rolex to have a rotatable bezel. So if you're a Rolex connoisseur and you really know your history, you're going to appreciate this great design decision that takes inspiration from a date just. Again, a fitting amalgamation. So let's talk about the positives. Well, first of all, it wears like a vintage piece, but reads at a glance like a modern sub. You've got all the cutting edge technology. It's the perfect marriage. You know, this is why I went back to the traditional kind of, you know, all my Rolexes, actually, come to think of it, with the exception of my day date, are pretty much vintage. So it feels a little bit more special. It's also a less predictable choice. I like that. I really do appreciate that. I love the beguiling blue. I mean, it's just absolutely luscious. Need I say more? Also, there's no stupid waiting lists. You can buy it relatively easy. Like this one from Moyer, for example, which of course now I'm considering buying, which is, you know, the detriment of borrowing watches. But anyway, it's undoubtedly more inclined for the smaller wrist like myself, and it goes without saying the performance is outstanding in every single way. I mean, it delivers. It's beautifully constructed. It's the pinnacle of Swiss luxury watchmaking, absolute top quality you expect from a modern Rolex. And I have to say, I love the bi-directional bezel. It's really practical. It's something that kind of, you know, when I first got my Tudor sub, I thought it was broken. And then, of course, I researched it and realized, well, actually, this particular reference comes with a bi-directional bezel. And in hindsight, I've come to love it because it's so much more practical at timing everyday things, from cardio to cooking to whatever, you know. It's just easier being able to go back. But of course, if you're a serious diver, I mean, I'm not going to go diving. You guys know I've got dicky lungs, and unfortunately, sadly, I'll never go diving again. But for every day, absolutely perfect. I mean, most of us don't go diving anyway, so 100 meters water resistance is perfectly fine. The 70-hour power reserve is really cracking as well, especially if you wear this as your daily watch and then take it off for something a bit more fun and vibrant for the weekend. But having said that, I mean, this is pretty fun and vibrant. You know, it'll still be going on Monday morning, you know, when you pick it back up, which is just fantastic. It has amazing versatility. I think it works really well with formal attire, more than your kind of toolish looking sub there, even though Bond pulls it off absolutely perfectly well. I mean, I'm not going to get into that discussion, but yeah, it's definitely a little bit more elegant, shall we say. And at the same time, it works well with casual attire. If you are a shirt and tie kind of guy, this has wonderful cuff-friendly slenderness to it. And it goes without saying, you have all the inherent Rolex value retention. So let's talk about the negatives. Well, I'll start off with my biggest negative, and that is the polished center links. They are absolute smudge magnets. I keep finding myself rubbing them like this. Personally, I think this would have worked much better on a Jubilee to kind of even further link it to its date-just roots. Reminds me of the second point. It is on the flashy side. I found myself wary of people looking at it. I got a lot more looks at, you know, with this watch. It attracts a lot of attention for a steel watch. Never really encountered that before. With my sub or my Explorer, they completely fly under the radar. Or my Seiko SKX, I don't like to court too much attention. But if you're into that, if you like that kind of thing, then yeah, definitely this is much more up your alley. And one could say that the combination of red and blue is a little, I think the only expression is toy-like, kind of little toyish. Personally, I don't mind it. It's a matter of taste at the end of the day. You know, I have my Pepsi, as you guys know, and I think blue and red is a really nice kind of opposing colors, you know, so it's fun at the end of the day, but that's just taste. It would be nice to have, perhaps with just the regular hands in silver. I wonder what that will look like. I'll try and add a kind of rendering or something, but that could be quite interesting. And while we're on the subject of the hands, I got to say the Mercedes hands I find a little undersized, and that's because of the more exaggerated markers. It makes it look smaller. Now, you don't notice it until you look at the relationship on like vintage subs like that. This is essentially the same layout as a 1680, just with Tudor there, and of course triangles here and here instead of rectangles, but pretty much it's the same scale, and that's what I'm saying. Now, once you see that, you can't really unsee it. Doesn't affect performance. Just a little thing that nags me. I think these could have been a bit smaller. That's just my personal opinion. I have to say, I think the monochrome color scheme of the new 42 is a lot more low-key and really cool. And the less said about the the rose gold one, not my cup of tea at all. And my last negative has to do with well, it's a bit difficult to explain, but it does not imbue the same nostalgic feelings I have for watches that I've known for most of my life, like the Subby or the Datejust. The Yachty, I guess you could say, you have to create new attachments because it does lack a little bit of history. Sure, it was innovative in terms of its, you know, debuting new materials, sizes, styles, but it lacks that romance, which for me is very important. For example, my love for Navitimers or GMTs, etc. There's an immediate connection you feel to the glorious kind of bygone ages or moments in history. I know it's a bit difficult, it's not a tangible thing, but those emotions, those connections, they mean something to me. The Sub always makes me feel like James Bond, and a ton of memories flood back whenever I wear a Datejust. So, in conclusion, this is the Kipper's Knickers, undoubtedly. I mean, so much so that if I had to buy a Rolex, I think this would be my next one. Early in my watch collecting journey, I had predominantly Datejusts and Submariners, and had I have known about the Yacht-Master, I would have probably chosen differently, because I think it would have made more sense to sell both and just have one watch, pocket the change and spend the rest on more different kind of watches, like more Navitimers, more Seikos, etc. In the end, I would have probably, I think it's best just to own them all, really. But anyway, ultimately, this is a super fun watch. It's the very best of Rolex, the epitome of their technical brilliance. It's the perfect thing to wear on a boisterous weekend in Miami, but just as well suited as for an evening of fine dining and or gallivanting about on a yacht in Monte Carlo, or even just jogging on the beach to get rid of the hangover from the night before. This is what you want. Unashamedly pure class. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thoughts, queries, opinions, all the rest of it. What do you like about it? What do you dislike about it? Also, don't forget to like this video. Very important indeed. Very important. If you enjoyed it and want to see more, please do like. And as always, guys, thank you very, very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Okay, ciao.